Are you ready?
I
right.
am ready.
All right, good.
Good to go.
Okay, this calls to order the Inland Wetland Agency of the Conservation Commission by video conference and teleconference. May we have a roll call?
Don Mailing,
Here.
John Levin,
Present.
Steve Clocky,
Here.
Jen Balliet.
Here.
That's it for now.
Okay. We'll move to, we have a quorum. Others may join us in a minute or two. We'll move to receipt and discussion. Item S21-568, 4 Half Mile Road, Alfano. Correction agent, corrective action, landscaping and debris removal. There was a lot of material supplied about this. And my understanding is that the applicant is working on delivering on the corrective action required. Any update, Alexis?
Yes, and just to note that Commissioner Marin has joined the meeting. So tonight is the receipt of this application, and the applicant and property owner, the Alfanos, are present at the meeting. Let me just see. A second. Mapping program has crashed, of course. That's the way we're rolling lately. Let me just try to pick up a map. All right, let me just go to 1 second. So the property is Half Mile Road. I'm just getting some. Okay, so the property is on Half Mile Road. Half Mile is off of Grumman Avenue, just north of the Merritt Parkway. And in the vicinity, at the rear of 4 Half Mile, is a wetland watercourse system. The property owners relatively recently purchased the property. I want to say in near the end of 2018, and since owning the property, had initiated doing some landscaping work in the rear of the property, and that resulted in my issuance of a notice of violation for regulated activities without a permit. I had gone out there because they are on another note seeking to do an addition to the rear of their property, and I had to go out to see if the proposed addition would be within the regulated area or not, and it does not appear that it is, or if it is, it's only minor. But when I went out there, I had noticed that the area adjacent to the ponded area, the wooded swamp in the very rear of the property, looked different than what was in aerial photos. So they were issued a notice of it was an order. They were issued an order, which you actually upheld at the previous meeting. That's right. So you had seen those photos. And as directed by the order, the property owners have submitted an application to rectify the violations. Let me just pull that up and share my screen real quick. So as required by the order, they had the wetland field delineated. So I'm looking to. Well, I can't rotate my screen, I guess. So shared on the screen and on the left hand of the screen is Half Mile Road. In the front of the lot is the existing residence. And then in the back is this wooded swamp area. And then the green colored area is the limit of the wetlands. If you go out to the property, it is a very gradual slope of what looks like historic fill, and it is historic fill around the residence that then slopes down on all sides. The rear yard is not wetlands, which is excellent. The UD is eudorthins or fill material, but all that fill is old. And let's see, let me go back to the application for the restoration plan. What they're proposing is to basically remove all of the piled debris that's within the wetland, the watercourse, and the non-lawn area adjacent to it, and to reseed those with a native seed mix. This is a photograph of the property taken from get my directions, the side property line. That would be the eastern, my back when taking this photograph is to the eastern property line, and I'm looking across the property west towards the western property line is somewhere kind of along here. This is the area of standing water. This is the wetland area. That's a smaller wood pile. And it's this area here that has the landscaping debris, and it's this area back here that has the construction debris. And then somewhere along between where the debris is and the wetland line is and the existing lawn area, there is kind of an area of kind of scraped up soil. And that's where the historic buffer had been. Let me quickly go to the aerial photo. So again, here's the ponded wet area in the back. It's hard to see with the trees there, but it's the very, very dark area. The wetland is this area rimming it. And then historically there had been kind of a demarcation between the established lawn area, which is within the upland review area, and then a little bit of a buffer, and then the wetland area immediately preceding the wetland.
So there's a fence there in this picture, but it's not there anymore.
Correct. It's not there anymore. So there is one little piece of the fence, but other than that, it's been removed. And so I think that's kind of in a nutshell, to remove the debris and then to seed it with a native seed mix.
What did you say about the buffer? Is there a buffer? I mean, is there a buffer included in the remediation proposal?
There is. Let me go back to
we could talk a little bit about the old fence, if you don't mind.
That would be great. And so, John, I'd say that maybe the narrative regarding the the cleanup and the seeding might need to just be clarified to kind of confirm the extent of the seeding that's proposed.
Okay, so the seating is intended to be, to serve partly as a buffer between the living area and the wetlands. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe so. I spoke to Lou Alfano earlier, who I indicated to him that there were one of the concerns was that there was potentially no buffer now between the lawn and the wetland area. And he had indicated that you know the area between the lawn and the wetland could be overseeded as well, but I can let them speak at this point, perhaps.
Yes, let's hear from them if they'd like to say something.
Yeah, the white fence that you're referring to as a buffer, I'm not sure if that was its initial intent for it to be a buffer. When we purchased the property at the end of August of 2018, there's several layers of fence throughout the property. The white fence also was on the eastern side of the house and on the western side, as if it was designed for maybe a dog to keep in. And we've removed the fence from the front side of the house and the back side. And also, if we've had some, I don't know if the right word is disputes, but we've had some conversations with the neighbors. They thought our property ended at the white fence and that the pond was theirs. If you look back at the aerial shot, there was on the northern eastern corner, there was a shed. That entire shed was not ours. It was the neighbor that's actually on Grubbin Street, and they've moved it since we've showed them where the property lines are. So
yeah, so it just created borders, which, you know, we had to explain to the neighbors that, you know, that's not where it ends. That's not where.
so you could
know.
even see the white fence on the left side of the house and the white fence that went along the yeah, exactly.
Right.
So I don't know if it was intended to be a buffer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was, I don't know if that was the intent, but it certainly acted as a buffer between kind of the lawn area and then the wetland and then the larger water course.
Yeah, and the neighbors on all sides have kind of been bringing their stuff over, and we've, you know, through the 2 years that we've been here, have been kindly reminding them that this is not their land, to keep their debris to their side.
But the good news is it stopped.
You know,
Right,
and
and I don't think that there's any, I don't think there's any disputing that, and that you know, you have every right to remove the fence and to keep the, you know, all the neighbor encroachments off of your property. I think the commission is just interested in kind of the deposition of debris within the wetland, making sure that that comes out and that the wetland and water course are protected, not
absolutely.
Yeah.
And
certainly from your neighbors, which we support you.
we're full
And then
agree-
also kind of your what are kind of typical residential lawn activities.
yeah, I mean, we're in full agreement. I mean, there are stuff there that we have put there. There's stuff there that others have put there. There's stuff there that's old, you know, like it's decaying, and and we would love to restore it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm sensitive to the matter of confusion, shall we say, amongst the neighbors as to where the lines are. In my own home, I've had people come along and say, well, the realtor told us that this was, you know, so, and I keep a very old moth-eaten plot plan, which I drag out, you know. I think, you know, your proposal seems reasonable and sensible. The only concern I would have would be to maybe a little bit more clearly make the buffer supportive of the wetlands by putting in maybe some low plants that are appropriate. Staff can recommend them. I think, you're, looking forward to quiet tenancy and enjoy what you can. But in the future, it would be nice to know that that buffer was not only there, but maybe obvious with the plantings that were on it. Any other commissioners' comments? Okay. Well, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having us.
All right, so we'll have you back on the May 11th meeting agenda, and I will talk to you before then.
Awesome. Thank you.
Take care.
Have a good one.
Good night.
Good night.
Okay. Moving on to Part B of Section 3. In the vicinity of Scribner Avenue and Kelly Drive, Norwalk DPW. Is anyone here from the DPW? Okay.
Yes, there's a handful of people representing Public Works. And so
I'm
just to
here, Drew
recap,
Brundlemeyer.
it's a 2019 permit that any of you that were here in 2019 remember a series of public hearings. There were 5 areas that the Public Works Department proposed to do kind of a watercourse maintenance, as they call it, activities to assist in some drainage problems throughout the city. And this was one of them in the vicinity of Scribner Avenue and Kelly Court and Kelly Drive and West Cedar Street. So all of those activities, just to let you know, that the work covered by those permits is in process, and I'm sure Drew will cover this some more, but the contractor is out doing the work. The area that they're seeking to modify the permit is an area that was within the project scope. The area was in the project scope, but the amount of activity, they just wanted to increase the scope of their activities a little bit within this one area. And so with that, you are welcome, applicant, to describe more. If you need me to share my screen, I can. or-
I could share my screen on my other login. I apologize that you'll have to look at my profile. 'Cause I've got access to a microphone and a video on one screen and my documents on another. So
We all have profiles, so don't feel shy.
okay. All right, so let me just get to the documents here.
And this is basically a flood control effort, or it was, as I recall, in 2019.
Yes, it
Yeah.
is.
A
So,
flooding control, not like a FEMA designated flood control, just to
Right.
clarify, but a flooding, yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, so this is we had 5 different locations that we had approved, 5 different permits. So we'll just focus on this one permit, which is for the Keeley Drive area. And this is an overview of the majority of that project scope. And here at West Cedar Street, we are at number 264 West Cedar Street. And as part of our approved scope, we had the removal of up to a foot of material along the ditch along the front of that residence. But what we discovered during our cleanup of the upstream portion that borders on Keeley Court, which is where we have a large amount of the complaints for flooding, is that there is a pipe system that comes from that cul-de-sac to this area here. We found the pipes were buried there. There's a set of twin 6-inch pipes, and we discovered that the reason why they're buried here is that they're invert. The bottom opening of the pipe is actually lower than the than the pipe that goes under the driveway of the resident at 264 West Cedar Street. So what we propose to do is to lower that culvert a very small amount. This is zooming into that area. So on the left, you'll see what was originally approved. And on the right is the showing in red the alterations that we're asking for. So the twin pipes are, I don't know if you can see my cursor. I don't think you can. But in the upper right corner, there is where the original limit of work is written near the that northern star is. The twin 6-inch pipes come out around that vicinity. And any water that comes out of those pipes is just going to sit here in this area without having conveyance of it underneath the driveway. And we could get that conveyance by removing, we have 2 trees that we think the root ball is going to interfere with the conveyance of water to the driveway pipe. And we're not looking to change the pipe size underneath the driveway. We simply need to have it lowered a small amount. So on the upstream invert, it shows that the existing is elevation 91.38 and our proposed invert is 91.18. So we're only looking to lower that culvert 0.2 feet on the upstream side and 0.6 feet on the downstream side. The existing is 91.76 and we want to make it 91.17. The pipe under the driveway, by the way, is back pitched. If you look at the existing inverts, you'll see that the pitch of the pipe underneath the driveway is actually pitched the wrong way. So so we wanted to alter the pitch of the pipe underneath the driveway and remove the small amount of material that these root balls or any collection of material that's come through the system over time has accumulated here because of that variation in elevation. So by just adding this small amount of excavation to what we had proposed before, which is everything colored is excavation that we've already performed to date. So we're just looking for a few inches in that upper right box on the other side of that driveway, just to these limits shown here, to be able to get positive conveyance of the water that drains from Keeley Drive. I think it's Drive over here.
Okay. All right, thank you. I mean, I think we're talking about insignificant impact on the wetlands and furtherance of an attempt to try to deal with extraordinary rainfall and other kinds of events that impact on the residents. Commissioners, any questions? Okay, I mean,
Are we literally talking about 2 inches? All this work is being done because of 2 inches of height change?
0.2 feet. So so that is it's a few inches, four inches on one side, a little more than 6 inches on the other.
Yeah, I mean, relative to the original scope of work, this is pretty minor. It can't be, it has to come to you because it's work within a wetland. within the wetland itself. So the state statute has limits for the administrative authority of your agent for any activity in a wetland or in a water course.
Plus, the original permit did not approve this, so we have to okay it for technical reasons, if none other.
Was this requested in the original, or this is just something new in addition to?
It was just something that we overlooked in the original scope of things. We didn't realize that that those pipes that drain Healy Court were actually below grade over there.
Yeah, it looks like the pitch, like you're saying, is just the wrong way, right?
Yeah, underneath the driveway, and we do
Right.
want to lower it enough to be able to convey water from the twin 6-inch pipes, which you know, we didn't see the outfall, and so we hand dug in front of that area, which was outside of the wetland limit, to find the outfall of the pipe, and that's how we determined what the existing invert is there.
So to me, this appears to be effectively an immaterial modification of an existing permit. Is there anything else that is going on here besides that?
No, I just want to be completely transparent in exactly what we're doing. We also have an environmental scientist that we have as a consultant with us. And I always defer to them, their advisement in pursuing things. I mean, they're helping us to regulate ourselves to be within the permits. We not only have a permit through conservation, but we also have a permit through DEEP and through Army Corps. So we are currently actively pursuing those regulatory agencies as well to make sure that they understand this change in scope as well.
Well, I doubt that we're going to hold you up very much longer, Drew. I think that it makes sense. And thank you for updating us.
Okay.
So it sounds like I will-
We'll come up with something formal in 2 weeks. Is that correct, Alexis?
Sounds good.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. You bet.
Thank you.
Thanks, Drew.
Okay, now in conjunction with all this, we have a fee waiver request, S19-533A. We have a modification fee, but we don't have any out of pocket on this really, do we?
No, well, technically you have to notice the decision in the hour, which is $90, but you don't have to. I don't believe that modifications are charged another state land use fee.
Well, if we don't have any out of pocket expense, I don't see taking the money out of one pocket and putting it in the other.
Well, the hour is still $90, right? Do we,
Yeah,
doesn't matter.
Well, then they should pay for that.
whatever you like.
Anybody else?
I mean, you know, we don't have any out-of-pocket expense for other applications as well. And yet we collect the application fees from other applicants. And I'm concerned about treating applicants differently for any reason. And I recognize that this applicant is a government entity or represents a government entity. I'm not sure that should matter.
I'm on the same page as Evan. I think that we should not waive their fee, even if it is just putting in one different pocket, just to make sure that all applicants are treated equally.
Well, we may choose to waive a fee in the future. We can't imagine what the circumstances would be. But in any case, it's just a question. There's what, 5 of us, Alexis? We can, if someone will move it, we can vote. Anybody? All right, I will. Somebody speak up. I didn't hear.
I was I was going to move that we decline or reject the fee waiver application.
Okay. Move to decline. Do I hear a second?
I second that motion.
Any discussion other than what we've had? Okay, maybe in this case, since there's likely to be a difference, Alexis, why don't you call the roll?
Absolutely. John Malling,
I vote no. No meaning no on the
in
motion.
in opposition to the motion, yes. Mr. Clocky,
Yay.
Valiant,
Nay.
Maren,
Yay.
and Levin.
Yes,
Okay, that looks like 3 and 2 to me.
Right.
Is that
so,
right, Alexis?
That's correct.
Okay, the
So
motion,
the motion failed. With, right?
no, the motion succeeded.
Oh,
the motion
Steve,
carried.
you were a yay. I'm sorry. I was thinking yay, no. Anyway,
Yeah. The motion was that
Successful.
that the fee waiver not be granted. And that motion carried.
all right.
Mine was a double negative. I voted against the negative. So anyway,
Understood.
that's it. We have spoken.
Okay. So I will work to collect the fee from the Public Works Department.
Okay. I have to say in passing, I agree with the concept of treating everybody evenly and fairly. But we need to be aware that situations may come up that are more of a head scratcher than this one. Anyway, moving right along. Number 5, decision and discussion, or discussion and or decision. The first is 8 Shadow Lane, Garcia, installation of in-ground pool and retaining wall adjacent to a wetland and water course. Alexis?
So this was an application that you received in the end of February. And upon receipt, there was some discussion regarding components of the plan. And the applicants have since asked for the matter to be tabled while they work on revisions to the plan. They have revised the plan. And the applicant's representative is here tonight to describe the revisions. I can share my screen if you want, or if you are able to, Ms. Throckmorton.
I'm able to, and I've got some color highlighted on it, so it might be a little easier to read than just a black and white one, if I may.
Sounds good.
Kate Throckmorton.
Yes, for the record, Kay Throckmorton, licensed landscape architect with Environmental Land Solutions. Good evening, everybody.
Thank you.
This is an application, or was accepted as an application primarily for a pool. The top of your screen is the cul-de-sac at Shadow Lane. The existing residence is essentially at the center of the property. We've got Woods Brook Pond that comes through the northern half of the property under the driveway. The regulated areas are highlighted, the 50-foot in purple and the 100-foot in kind of a pinkish beige color up here. So the proposed pool itself is outside the regulated area, but the access and some minor landscaping is proposed within your regulated area. And there was a couple of comments from the commission. One was to reduce any unnecessary lawn that we could at the front of the house and along the buffer. And secondly, there was a retaining wall that was along the stream that was in the flood zone that's noted on the map. And that was actually what took us, there was a prolonged delay with, and I'll just bring you up to speed just for your edification. There's an existing flood line that runs through the house that is shown on this map. This map reflects the proposed conditions of when this house was renovated several years ago. with a minor permit. During that process, the owner chose to actually have a flood study done to bring his house outside the floodplain. So that was actually done. And we were hoping to incorporate that information on this plan and hopefully allow this retaining wall at the front of the house to remain. But mostly because surveyors are so backed up with work, we were not able to pull that information together yet. So we are moving ahead without the wall. So there won't be any regrading in the front. However, we have addressed a couple of your additional concerns. One was to reduce the lawn over in this area. So we've eliminated the lawn and replanted this portion of the buffer. And on the right side of the driveway on the screen, we've beefed up the plantings on this side of the driveway and added a tree. There's 2 existing trees that are currently in this area. One's an ornamental, one is a native dogwood, but they're both in very poor condition. So with this application, I'm remaining that propose that these 2 trees come out, but I have proposed that 3 go back in. And so the green highlights all the shrubs that have been proposed, essentially beefing up the ones along the pond. And I think that was the comments that I got back, the feedback from the commission. So I'm hoping that we can move forward without the wall and with added planting. And I'm happy to answer any questions or any concerns you have.
Hey, can you talk just a minute about the grade on this property? When I visited, I noticed that that behind the proposed pool, there seems to be quite a significant slope, a steep slope.
Yes, actually, that's I'd be happy to do that, John. There is a slope that runs, the base of the slope is actually behind the house and it comes up to the top here. I think it's almost about an 8-foot to 10-foot change in grade. And the part of that is this area is going to be cut down and this area is going to be filled. And that's going to be accommodated actually through a retaining wall, a low retaining wall that runs around the pool and through the yard, essentially to creating 2 level areas as opposed to the current sloping area. So let's see. So again, most of that work is still out of the regulated area, but we are going to be cutting into the slope a little bit so that the area around the pool is level and the area around the back of the house is level. I think the wall is to have a maximum height of about 3 feet. And so there will be some earthwork. The goal is that would be a balance of earthwork so that we will minimize, if not eliminate, the export of materials off the site if possible.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I would advocate that you get the world's most powerful silt fence working for you on this project.
Well, I was actually going to ask about that. Are we happy? Are we in the where the silt fence is? I mean, we're confident that your 1 layer of regular old silt fence does the job. Do we want to do 2 layers? I mean, Kate, are you?
Sure, I'd be happy to add a second layer to that if you'd like. One thing that I have included, I certainly have added tree protection around the perimeter trees. And I've also noted on the plan that the 2 trees that I proposed to come out actually stay and all this area not be touched until the pool and all the grading work is done to help reinforce that. But and keep in mind, I mean, there will be traffic through here, but not necessarily earthwork. But I'd be happy to add a second line of silt fence around all of the travel way to provide an added comfort level.
Great.
Whatever you think.
Does he have a preliminary estimate for where the flood zone is? You had mentioned that the existing residence was outside of the flood zone?
Yes, I'm gonna have to
Yep.
check.
Is the- What I
It's
really want to know is,
roughly, I don't know exactly, but it is,
Okay.
it creates it so that the house is out. What was unclear is whether or not the area where the small retaining wall along the brook, whether that was in or out, and that does have to all be incorporated on the survey, and so we took it out.
okay,
So do we have a draft resolution to approve, or is that coming in 2 weeks?
yeah, I will have one ready for you in 2 weeks. I really didn't know what, if any, comments you'd have, so.
I'm, you know, the area to the right of the schematic that's shown here is well raised up and separate from the wetlands in the upper right-hand corner. And the whole of the construction is away from Woods Pond Brook. Appreciate the fact that that's being beefed up and made nicer. But the work on the pool isn't really going to impact that area. It'd have to work its way through the residents in order to do so. So I think if we have, you know, extra protection for the process of construction, that we'll be doing it right by the wetlands on the property. So I would, I'd be pretty positive about this. If there's no other comments from the commissioners, Kate, we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Okay, thank you
Or
very much.
or somebody.
Yes.
All right, moving on to 12 Holiday Drive. This one, I think we pretty well discussed last time.
So I did include a memorandum that includes a draft resolution to
Really?
approve as you had requested. I believe so.
Okay.
Did I?
In her email, yeah.
In my email, okay.
Well, I don't have it before me, so maybe somebody who does can frame a motion.
So I'll just note that it's substantially similar to the corrective action application that you previously approved at number, what would that be, 12?
12 Holiday
12.
No,
Drive.
wait, you're 12.
Yeah,
On
10,
number-
I think is
number
what you're
10.
referring to. Yeah,
Holiday Drive. That's
we've been
fine.
busy on that road.
Mhm.
So similar that I see that my memo mentions number 10 Holiday Drive, but this is a resolution for number 12 Holiday Drive. With
Well,
similar conditions, a bond that would cover the planting, which includes one tree, and overseeding with a native seed mix. And then also the sedimentation erosion controls and the removal of the wood chips. The planting would be held for 2 full growing seasons. Everything else would be eligible for release upon completion. That the applicant adhere to his plan and notes, and that the wood chips in both the mulch and the path wood chips be removed without heavy machinery. And that these areas be maintained in the future as a natural vegetated state. Those are kind of the highlights.
Oh,
Okay, so-
I move, or go ahead, Steve, if you're,
Well, go ahead.
I'm just gonna say that I would move that the application for corrective action at 12 Holiday Drive, number S21-567 be granted with the conditions outlined by staff.
With a slight edit, that is actually 12 Holiday Drive, not 10.
Good point. Do I hear a second?
I second the motion.
All in favor? Can do it.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Discussion, none. It's granted. Thank you for your patience, Mr. Lawton.
Thank you guys all for your time.
Okay, number 6, permit transfer. JDMU LLC. This was apparently approved at, I don't know, several years ago. Alexis,
It
or did they
was.
just change the name or what?
No, it's a new owner. So it's a conservation development that was approved well, it was approved in March 2018 for a 5-unit conservation development. Briarwood is off of U Street, which is kind of across from Silvermine School, sort of. If you go from Silvermine School up U Street and then off to the right, you'll arrive at Briarwood area. We call it a road. And so the property has been bought by a new developer. And so they wish to, as is required by your regulations, they submitted an application to transfer the permit from the previous owner's name to their name. And I suspect they will begin construction soon. And that it's kind of similar to the White Barn Conservation Development permit transfer, where the applicant rather is required to give you notice, formal notice that a permit is transferring, and then you don't really have an action, but you accept that, you officially accept the transfer of the permit.
Did we, on the original permit, was there a completion term or a completion date?
Yes.
So with the new one,
Yes.
does that stay the same or does that change?
It does not change, so it remains the same. And this is one of the ones that is tied to the special permit approval by the zoning commission. And I don't have the date for its
I imagine it must be pretty quick.
expiration, but it is not around the corner.
Okay,
Still valid.
so we have to move to transfer it and, okay,
I move to receive and accept notice of this transfer of permit from the old property owner to the new property owner.
I'll second that.
moved and seconded by John Levin that the permit transfer be approved. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Discussion? Okay, so the permit transfer is granted. Moving on, enforcement actions.
Just a point of information. We don't approve the transfer of the permit. We simply receive notice. And
Correct.
right, so we're
Yeah.
not really approving a
You're not
transfer.
approving,
We're
you're
simply
just-
acknowledging notice of the transfer and that's it.
Correct. You're formally accepting it, right? Yeah, I don't know if a motion is really needed for an acceptance, but it's kind of like the
Okay.
minutes. I think the minutes of that last meeting.
I guess
You accept-
every permit recipient is a counterparty, effectively a counterparty to the commission. So therefore, we're accepting the substitution of one counterparty for a new counterparty, effectively.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good analogy.
Okay, if everybody's ready, we'll go on to number 6, permit. No, we did 6, 7, enforcement actions. Fee 21, 1021, 70 Witch Lane, show cause hearing, removal of vegetation, construction of retaining walls, etc., without benefit of a permit.
I believe that the respondent or the respondent's representative or someone is here. I think that they are going to be asking for a continuance. The order was sent to the old owner of record. The property was transferred right on the 1st of April, I believe. So the city's internal records did not catch up by the time that I send the order. Anthony, I think it's Anthony, whoever is helping us out on Norwalk Zooms 3, if you could, if you're listening, if you could promote Jen Horvath in the attendees who has a hand raised to speak. Thank you. You're awesome. So the property is now owned by Jen Horvath. So if you're interested in just requesting a continuance, go ahead. If you don't want a continuance, then I'll explain the whole procedure for a show cause hearing.
Oh, yes. Can you hear us?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Hi, I would like to speak in behalf of Jennifer. She's here with me to obtain, to get a continuance for at least 30 days to obtain counsel to help us navigate through this. This is pretty new to us, and we would just like to get some help and corrective action and what permits we need and what we need to do moving forward.
Okay, and could you just identify yourself for the record?
Yeah, my name is Tim. I'm Jennifer's fiance. I think I spoke to you today, Alexis.
Yes. Yep, we spoke today, and as I said, technically the show cause hearing has the sole purpose of just looking at whether there is a wetland violation, and if there is a wetland violation, are the directives in line with restoration and rectifying the violation. So having a plan at hand to remedy the situation or to figure out the applications is not necessary at this point, at this juncture. But
I would say that given the seriousness of this, that 30 days is seems to me to be more than what would be necessary to address this and come up with potential approaches to a corrective action. I mean, I understand and am sympathetic to the recent transfer of ownership. And for that reason, I think postponement of this until our next meeting in May would be reasonable. But to extend it any further than that seems to me to be inviting a much longer process than we want to have happen.
When is the next meeting in May?
it will be May 11th.
I think can we make that work?
Yeah, we could make that work. That would be great. And would appreciate it very much.
All right, in that case then, I don't know, do we need a motion, Alexis?
No, I think you can just table it to your next meeting on May 11th, and I will present my testimony, and then the respondent, you will have an opportunity to give the agency any additional information that you want regarding the physical conditions of the property.
Very well.
Okay.
We will see you all on the 11th.
Have a good night.
Thanks, you too.
Okay, moving along to B, V21-1022, 20 Granite Drive, Luzardo. Combination of potential violations together with non-compliance with the earlier granted permit. That's what it looks like at this point.
Yes, the respondents emailed me earlier today to ask for a continuance into your next meeting on May 11th. Apparently, they both received their second COVID vaccination shot, and neither of them report feeling up to attending tonight. So I guess I would add them to the agenda as well, seeing as they are not in attendance and are unprepared. I'll just read you the email I received. Good afternoon, Alexis. If possible, we would like to move our meeting to the 11th due to our COVID vaccines that we received today. We will work to submit our permit prior to that date. Please let me know if this is still allowable. Thank you. So
It doesn't look like we have much choice, so.
Right.
In the interest of saving time, I would say we just table this, but I would also comment that I'm very upset about the failure to comply with the earlier permit. This is one of the first times I've ever run into that. We depend to a very large extent on the goodwill of the people who come before us and our own. And it's problematic, but we'll hear their view on the 11th.
Okay.
Next on the list is Open Space Fund request, and I am going to recuse myself from that and turn it over to Steve. And
Okay.
I will put a shroud over my screen. I guess that's what I do.
Like a parakeet.
Yeah, like a parakeet, that's right. Does that work? Does that actually work?
Just try, you know,
Does.
put a tea cozy on your head.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye, John. Okay, what's the story with this one, Alexis?
Okay, I'm just going to pull up the land trust letter, and hold on one moment as I try to find it. Let it open.
So I know that
Okay.
Alexis sent us the letter application and from the Norwalk Land Trust.
Yes.
I-
And I don't know if just before we shred it, I don't know if there is anyone. Well, I mean, their request is in written form, and I don't know if anyone from the land trust is attending. Hold on a second.
I mean, I just want to say, I
Yes.
read their application letter. I read the statute that provides the permitted uses of the funds. Two sections of that statute are included in their application letter, and I'm astonished that they are able to somehow conclude that their application qualifies under the permitted uses of funds. My reading is unequivocal that the purpose of the application does not satisfy the permitted uses of funds. And I suppose we could discuss this or not, but I'm wondering if anyone has a different view or just simply wants more information.
So I think you're referring to, John, C and D, permitted use of the funds. C is contributing to the cost of land acquisitions. And D is payment of costs required to transform properties which are not considered open space to open space, transforming them from not open space to open space, including the costs of required environmental remediation. So.
Exactly. Yep. Correct.
How much money do we have in the fund? Or is in the fund?
So currently the fund has approximately 270,000. Sorry, I'm trying to multitask poorly. $273,000 in it. That doesn't include potential capital funds added to next year, but that's the current balance approximately.
With these applications, are we allowed to grant a portion of the amount requested, just in theory, rather than the full amount requested by the applicant?
I think that I think it's a two-step question. So then the first question would be, is the request consistent with the section 35.9 creation and purpose of the fund? And is it in line with section 35.11 permitted uses of the fund? And so then your first finding would be that, make a determination whether this is a permitted use of the fund and is it in line with the open space fund purpose. And then if yes, then yes, you can make any amount, you can, yes, is the short answer. The short, long answer. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I find the application is fits under the purpose, but this particular use does not qualify under the permitted uses of funds.
It looks like someone from the land trust is here. If there's any interest in hearing from them. Don't know if it actually is Peggy Holton or if someone's using Peggy's account, but if you want to speak, I will speak for the commission and invite you to speak.
Believe it or not, I just arrived, so I maybe I've missed things that I shouldn't have missed.
The commission is kind of just getting started. There's really only been one comment, and I suspect that Mr. Levin can re-articulate his comment so far if he wants to, or you can, if you can give any additional information or support of Mr. Hubbard's letter.
I'm happy to repeat for the benefit of Peggy Holton. Peggy, I personally have enormous respect for the Norwalk Land Trust. I love its mission, and I'm appreciative of all of the hard work that the members of the Land Trust and the supporters of the Land Trust have done over the many decades. However, the permitted uses of the funds under the statute, it's a very small amount of money that's available in the open space fund. $273,000 is the accumulated funds. And the request is for 200,000 of that. And it's for environmental, to pay the cost overruns associated with environmental remediation of a property that the Norwalk Land Trust received 42 years ago. And unfortunately, my reading, Peggy, of the permitted use of the funds is that that paying for remediation does not qualify under any of the permitted uses of funds in the statute.
Well, the Land Trust Board had a meeting to discuss this. We started at 5 and went longer than
yeah.
we had planned, because it's a tough situation. And of course, first of all, we, as you know and appreciate, and by the way, thank you for your good words, feel very responsible for making sure that we do right for the people of Norwalk, for the public, for the land. And unfortunately, White Island has been the victim of a fire, of vandalism, other things. And what we want to do with this application is make sure that we are being responsible for protecting and preserving the wildlife, the cleanliness of the waters of Long Island Sound. And this is a mission, of course, that is shared with the government that is responsible for the citizens of Norwalk. And it's because of this common responsibility that I would argue that use of this funding makes sense. Now, we had a couple of lawyers on our board, have a couple of lawyers on our board. And one of the things as a non-lawyer I find wonderful is watching people disagree. and disagree with valid rationales. In this case, I think we want to be responsible. Well, I'm going to, Celia has just joined us as well, but I think that there is a responsibility that rests with the city of Norwalk to prevent pollution, PCBs, ugly things, asbestos, that is going to damage the lives of the wildlife, of the purity of the sound. And let's face it, every weather report I listen to talks about the increasing frequency of serious weather events, which can take the pollution from Hoyt Island and unfortunately spread it around. And I think it is because we all care about people and about wildlife that we need to do this. So that's my nickel. Alexis, thank you so much for the invitation.
Does anybody have questions for, anybody else have questions for Peggy or anyone else?
I'd
Celia,
like
did
to,
you-
Other commissioners' thoughts on, where, any of this?
Okay.
Oh, Celia, sorry, go ahead. Oh.
I know that you've received some money in prior years, 2018, it looks like 2019. Are there any other applications out there for any other funds coming from another entity maybe, or are we just kind of the next step in line?
you are our primary step in line, but I'd like, now that Celia is with us, I'd like to defer that question to him.
Well, yes, I mean, this is I'm Celia Hubbard, president of the Norwalk Land Trust. And this is a project that was started back in 2015, actually a little bit before that. And it was Hoyt Island was owned by the Zahara estate, which is on which is on the mainland, just adjacent to where Hoyt Island is. And this was a caretaker's, cottage was on that island, but it was owned by an Arabist who took very exquisite care of it, and they donated it to the Land Trust in 1979. It was one of the earliest acquisitions that the Norwalk Land Trust got, and unfortunately in 2000 And 2008, it was arsonists burned it down, which is causing the problem that, which caused the problem of having toxic PCBs and asbestos contaminants on the island. It was a pristine island before then. And it was when the land trust discovered actually some terrapin turtles who had died in the wreckage of the cottage, and also we were told that this was a wildlife refuge for migratory birds and for many species. It was a very rich and very rich wildlife habitat. And so we partnered, the land trust partnered with the Connecticut Audubon Society, who did a 40-page report on this, and in that report they highlighted the importance of this island to the habitat and the ecology of that area. One of the things was that the report showed that there were over 148 species of birds that depended on and were located and used that island. And of that, 20 of them were of special concern, threatened, endangered, or under the Endangered Species Act. Not only that, because it is tidal and with the marshes, its importance to the ecology of the area and particularly of Norwalk Harbor can't be overemphasized. This is a very important piece of property for the environment, and particularly, at least for us now, with Earth Day just passing, and with the problems with climate change and what happened with Hurricane Sandy, these areas are even, I think, should be emphasized as very important to save. And so, yes, we in 2018 started a campaign. We got a grant from the state of Connecticut for $100,000. Bob Duff directed and helped that through the DEEP. And DEP recognized the importance of this particular property, because of we discovered that when they burned the house down, there were PCBs and asbestos and other materials that required remediation by the state of Connecticut. And it is at that time that we hired experts from a list recommended by DEEP, and proceeded to go through them in the permitting process to remediate the island. And this is what has brought us to where we are now. The initial, we had an initial estimate of what it would cost to do it. The first one was in 2015, and it was $128,000. But in order to get it done, we had to, and this was actually, we had got that estimate before we got the grant from the state. But we knew that in order to be able to clean this property up, we were going to have to raise money, and we did raise money. We raised approximately $50,000. But a lot of that was used on experts and other expenses involved. We eventually got to the point where we were at the point to hire a contractor to do the cleanup, and this was from a list from DEEP. We picked one from that list. We went through about 2 or 3 to choose, and so that, and then in the fall of 2020, we got their report and what it would cost, and it was their reports were that it would cost about $203,000. We've gone ahead, and one of the biggest problems with anything involving contaminated soil and contaminants is that the costs are very difficult to pin down, because it's sort of like they've got to scoop out whatever they think they're what they think they've gotten it all out, and they have to send it out. They have to have it tested, and if it isn't all, and then they have to then go back into to the island to test whether or not there's anything that they have left behind. And if they find that there's something that they've left behind, they've got to go through and do it again. And that's where we were, where they thought that it would be able to be done for $203,000. They now say it's going to take another $100,000, and that's because the
Actually, Mr. Hubbs, could we, if you don't mind me interrupting for a second, just for the sake of finding resolution to this, I think we really need to focus on aligning what you guys are proposing with what is allowed under, the permitted uses of the fund. So unless we can, I mean, I'm not really seeing a strong connection there. I think Commissioner Levin is definitely not seeing justification. I don't know about the other 2 commissioners, but is there anything that you can share that helps us justify under the conditions as they're written?
You mean in the municipal code, or?
No, under the permitted use of the open space fund, contributing to the cost of land acquisitions is one that was noted in the memo, and I don't think any of us can say that that's legitimate here.
That's right.
Because you already have the land. That's correct?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
We're not looking for acquisition funds. We're looking for remediation funds.
Okay, and so that would be the D, which is which includes the cost of required environmental remediation, but it's transforming properties which are not considered open space to open space. So can you say that we are transforming land that is not open space to open space?
Well, I think they say they were talking about natural. It qualifies.
So can I just jump in? Maybe I would like to see, maybe I'm reading the open space fund wrong, but for the creation and purpose, I'm reading it as the open space fund shall be to preserve or create open space and to protect its natural resources. I don't see how the applicant isn't doing that.
So you're saying they're preserving the open space by remediating it?
I'm wondering, yeah, that's not the way
I
I'm
think.
reading it.
I think the way that we would read that is that contaminated land is not open space. In other words, this contaminated land is that has to be remediated. once it's remediated to its natural state, but open space to me is natural, natural space. So this particular area of Hoyt Island now is contaminated with toxic waste. And that to me is not open space.
Okay, Commissioner Levin, did you have your hand raised?
Yeah, I mean, Celia, I think that's kind of a stretch. First, Farah, I agree with you. I think that this use is permitted for the purpose of the Open Space Fund. But the Open Space Fund really was, the permitted uses is really just to use the money to acquire additional open space or to transform land from not open space to open space. And I have great respect for the goals and missions of this particular effort. I just don't see this particular pot of money available for this particular purpose. As far as I can tell, Hoyt Island has been open space since it was deeded to the land trust 42 years ago.
Alexis, do we have a definition of open space to which we could refer?
No.
Do we have pictures that we can refer to, or
Yeah, so here's
we're operating in a vacuum here, kind of.
So going back to the section, I'll just read out loud the creation and purpose. Purpose pursuant to the authority vested in municipalities under the Connecticut General Statutes, which we can go back to if you like. There is hereby created a fund to be known as the Open Space Fund. The purpose of the fund shall be to preserve or create Norwalk's open space and to protect its natural resources by providing financial support for initiatives and activities that would primarily seek to preserve parcels of open space in perpetuity.
So how do you define preserve? Is preserving and just preventing development, or is it preserving like in an environmental way?
Yeah, I don't know. I think that is open for interpretation.
Yeah, that's
so the purpose is to preserve or create. So the section what am I trying to say? Article 3 of chapter 39 is very concise, and it's I think very well written and fairly narrow, but there are portions of it that aren't crystal clear and require the interpretation of the various entities that have to approve the use of the funds. And so you are the first step in the process of using those funds. And so and you don't have to decide this tonight, but it was laid out so that not one person was deciding, what exactly the word preserve means in this context, but that it go back to the Conservation Commission. And right now that means you guys to determine if the purposes of the fund, as is described in that sentence, and in the permitted uses of the fund, if this proposal is in line with that. I mean, maybe I'm avoiding the question, but I am avoiding the question.
Jennifer, do you have any input?
Well, I was just gonna ask. I know there were funds provided by the DEP a couple years ago. I'm wondering, Alexis, if there's any history of some kind of environmental cleanup happening elsewhere in Norwalk that we could refer to and see where the funds came through for that.
Yes, I mean, we could. I don't know the full extent of. Let me stop sharing. Of of potential grant funds out there. There are funds for open space acquisition. There certainly are funds for certain cleanup or, remediation of contaminated sites. But I don't know the particulars of each of those grant funds. Sometimes funds have to be on private property, which this is. Sometimes funds have to be on municipal property. Sometimes it has to be a brownfield, so it's a contaminated site that would be developed. This is not a brownfield because we don't want it developed. We want it to be preserved. Yes, there are likely funding sources out there. I don't know if this would, get those funds.
May I add a couple of thoughts to what you just said? Because first of all, I agree with it. Within the land trust, the bulk of our efforts each year are directed towards what we call stewardship of the land that we control. Now, stewardship means that when we are protecting lands in perpetuity, things happen and they have to be dealt with. And what we've got is a situation here where protecting the land means we've got to deal with the fact that the fire that took place, very frankly, by vandals, created a problem on our land. And we need to deal with it. If we are going to preserve it as open space, it was before the fire, but it's not in its current state. Right now, it's an element of death to wildlife, pollution of Long Island Sound. We don't want those things. You don't want those things. That's protection. So when we take on something in perpetuity, that says things will happen and they have to be dealt with. And that has to do with preserving open space.
Okay.
I could I add something? Because I think I think it goes to the question that was brought up before as to what is open space, because D in the municipal code talks about transforming property which are not considered open space to open space, to include required environmental remediation. That space, which is now has toxic materials in it, had a house on it, a cottage. And whether or not a cottage or a building like that is open space, I think you could say that was not open space. But even when it all of a sudden became a toxic ruin, I think that takes it even further from open space. And that by removing the construction materials and the toxic PCBs and the asbestos and turning it into and filling it in and turning it into natural open space for wildlife habitat is exactly what this is for, is to transform something that is not open space into open space, which would include the cost of required, and these are required from the DEP now that we have a grant from them, required environmental remediation. So I think that the fact that this went from a building to a toxic ruins it was never quote unquote open space.
Okay. Yeah.
So what I'm hearing is that it would not qualify under C, under permitted use of funds, because you're not acquiring anything. So the application would need to be revised and brought to us again.
No, we're not asking for it under C. We're asking for it under D.
Well, and Alexis, what is the function for moving this forward? Is it a vote? Is it, you know?
Right, I mean, you can ask, you can, yes, but the end result needs to be either a motion for or a motion in opposition. You can ask for additional information. You can ponder it, you can make a decision tonight, you can take it down the road.
Okay, so maybe it would be prudent for the land trust to maybe provide a little more information. So maybe it's easier for us to maybe visualize what's happening out there. Maybe refining some of the language to maybe focus in on, you know, what seems to be the opportunity for using these funds as discussed here in the past 30 minutes. Because I don't think any of us really seem ready to make a decision tonight. Just let me know anybody else if you disagree with that. Well, I won't put words in John's mouth, but I think John's okay. Yeah, I mean, but Jen and Farah, I mean, I'm on the fence still. I don't know about you guys.
I need more information.
Yeah, and actually, Alexis, I'm wondering if we can get more information from you. At least I would like some background on, I know the dollar amount now that is available, but how is that funded? Where have we put money before? Just because I'm thinking that's obviously the majority that's in there. So I don't know if it, you know, how long it takes to build that back up kind of thing.
Okay, so kind of a history of the open space fund.
Yes,
past
that would be
expenditures
great.
and revenue sources. Sure.
Yeah.
Alexis, I'd also, I mean, I don't know if this is possible, get clarity on some of the wording. So preserve is something that I would like defined. I would also like open space defined.
Yeah, I think that's your.
Well, I was gonna say, it sounds like we're burdening Alexis with a lot of the
Yep.
the
I mean-
responsibility of convincing us doesn't lie with Alexis. It lies on the land trust.
So
I'm
in-
wondering
like
if
in- Yeah, I was just gonna say in our regulations, this is not in our regulations, but in any regulations, like we'll take the zoning regulations because those aren't ours. You know, if there's something in the zoning regulations and there's a word that someone doesn't understand, then the backup is Webster's dictionary. And so I would
Sounds good to me.
I would go to, you know, the good old Merriam-Webster and look up what preserve means. And then open space, you're not going to really find I don't know, maybe Webster's has a definition for open space. I can certainly send you what the conservation, the previous Conservation Commission's effort to define open space for the city of Norwalk. There is a draft open space plan from 2005, and I can send you that draft that kind of lays out, it's not a definition of open space, but it talks about what attributes go into open space. So.
Well, perhaps the POCD, would the POCD contain a definition of open space?
I believe it does.
Okay.
So the
Use that.
POCD, I can find those sections of the 2019 POCD too for you.
Okay, so it sounds like we're going to get a little more information from Alexis. I think we're going to give the land trust an opportunity to maybe sharpen their pencils a bit, and because I think the burden of proof really is on you. You know, you've got to convince us, and so maybe we talk about this next time. John?
Yeah, I'd like to just raise one more question while we have members of the land trust meeting with us now. I'm wondering, I know that the land trust owns a variety of properties, And I am wondering if any of those properties are not currently open space. We've just received a description of Hoyt Island as having a portion of it not being open space because it's contaminated land. Are there any other properties that are owned by the Norwalk Land Trust that you would consider to be not open space?
Not that I can think of, no. No, I mean, I only, when I say we don't have any, we don't have any preserves or properties that have buildings on them except for Farm Creek, which has a barn. And whether or not buildings or parking lots or structures that are on property is natural open space. It's a question of defining, a definition. I mean, it's really, I don't know whether there's a legal definition of open space, but, my thought is that the intent of D here is that where there is when you're talking about environmental remediation, which they are specifically in D, if you have a property that requires environmental remediation and you're asking for costs for that environmental remediation, it would seem to me that that property is not defined as open space, and that the purpose of the costs are to change it from non-open space to open space. That would be my interpretation. But I don't know of any I don't have any quote, definitions, so to speak, that were built into the code. I don't think there's any set of definitions for the municipal code for this particular section.
John, let me add that until the fire, which released the toxins, we had open space. So what we're trying to do is restore valid, safe, open space. And in this case, the price is the remediation.
Okay. So,
Understood.
all right, if no one else has anything else to contribute tonight, we'll just look for something at our May 11th meeting? May 11th meeting. Okay, thank you for coming, Land Trust folks.
Our
Thank you.
pleasure.
Talk to you again.
It would. Thank you.
And I think we can get the chairman back. John Mailing, if he's listening.
Feeling.
There he is. Still muted though.
All right.
Alexis and Stephen, I just want to ask, the application from the Land Trust to gain access to Open Space Fund monies, this is a Conservation Commission responsibility completely separate from the Inland Waterways Agency
Inland
role.
Wetland Agency.
Right, so as a consequence, the rules that would apply to the INWA business really don't apply to this. So nothing prevents us from discussing amongst ourselves this particular application. Am I right or am I wrong?
Yeah, it's not an application as opposed to, it's a request.
Right. Yes.
for the open space fund. So
Yep.
I guess I would, so you still need to, you still need to apply the rules of kind of fundamental fairness. So you would not discuss it, among yourselves outside of a public meeting. I wouldn't discuss it now since Mr. Mailing is back in the meeting when he purposely recused himself to not be part of the discussion. So there's still those rules of kind of you're still the Conservation Commission is still a public,
Okay.
governing agency, but it's not a land use agency decision, not a regulatory decision. So.
Understood.
Yes. Gotcha. All right.
John, you're still muted, but the ball is yours.
Me?
The other one.
Other John.
Okay, that should fix things. Moving along to number 9, approval of minutes, April 13. Does anybody have any corrections or comments to make, additions? If not, have we a motion? I move that we approve the minutes of the April 13th, 2021 meeting. Do I hear a second? Can anybody hear me at all?
Yes, I hear you fine. I will second that excellent motion.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Moving on, public comments. Have we publics to comment? Alexis, anybody?
Yes, I think we do. Oops, sorry.
Looks like we have
Diane Lord.
Diane, you have the floor.
Thank you, Anthony.
Good evening. Can you all hear me? Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. On the Zoom world. I have a quick question, and I do thank John Mailing from recusing himself, but I wanted to comment on the recent discussion about Hoyt Island. So how should I handle this, Alexis or John? I just have a few comments since you've tabled it, which I think is good idea, get more information, but I do have some quick comments, but I did not know if it would be untoward.
I don't believe this. First of all, Diane, identify yourself for the record.
Oh, I'm sorry, John. Diane Lauricella, 21 Blue Mountain Ridge Road in Norwalk.
I don't believe there's anything that prevents me from listening to public comments, whatever they're on.
Okay.
So press on.
Okay, thank you so much. I know that you have given this some discussion, so I have edited what I was about to say, but I do want to offer some thoughts that may assist in the coming weeks. And I will also be reaching out to the Land Trust. I did send 2 emails to Alexis, but I'm going to pull together something to send that hopefully she will forward to you all in the coming weeks. First, I wanted to recognize and acknowledge the important role that the Land Trust plays and has continued to play in Norwalk. I am a past longtime board member of over 12 years and the former first stewardship committee chair. I think John was the next one, and then Mary Verrill is the current one. It is a lot of work, but it's a loving work, and I applaud their efforts in preserving Hoyt Island as a wildlife sanctuary eventually. And I also want to thank this commission and staff for its work. I decided to speak so I could offer in a few minutes some helpful alternatives to the land trust dilemma. I am writing to request that this $200,000 be denied for a variety of reasons, but I will put that in a letter with details. And I am hoping to forward some alternative funding mechanisms that are available both federally through not-for-profits in Connecticut that I am aware of, and possibly through DEEP. But the other way is to help the Land Trust with reducing the cost for this particular dilemma that was brought before you. The reason I can do this is I have over 25 years of professional experience doing environmental site assessments. I worked for the state as a PCB regulator for a time and an asbestos regulator in the 80s when I was much younger and had less wrinkles. Then I went on to work for 2 consulting firms where we did environmental site assessments. Phase 1, which is looking at historic reasons why sites might be contaminated and where the contamination might be located and what the source of the contamination is. The phase 2 session is doing the sampling to determine the extent of contamination. And then phase 3, which traditionally is doing the cleanup if any is needed or finding alternative ways to seal and to secure the site from any kind of intrusion later on. I was one of the first harbor commissioners under Mayor Collins in 1980s. Again, I was much younger then. I helped write the original harbor management plan. I'm the past founding president of NRWA, Newark River Watershed Association, and I'm currently on the Mayor's Water Quality Committee that includes work having to do with runoff of polluted runoff into the sound and the rivers. Now, I'm not telling you this because I want you to pat me on the back. I'm trying to establish that I have credibility in my following quick comments. Number one, I believe that this particular consultant needs to go back to the drawing board. As a former private consultant, or currently a consultant, but working for a consulting firm, a national consulting firm, if I so drastically underestimated the amount of a remediation job by $200,000, I would be fired right away because that is professionally questionable, that much money differentiation. Now, typically in cleanups, you do need some wiggle room. Sometimes things are discovered, but in the discovery characterization of the site, it depends upon what kind of sampling technique was used, how deep they went. Did they cross-contaminate the soil samples? All of these things are very important, and I'm not assuming that they did anything wrong. I'm going to be asking Sealy and the group if I can look at the reports just to give it an eyeball. But I do want to say, if this commission comes back and decides they would like to give some of the money, even half, I will say as a citizen that you need to get access to the reports and have either your own consultant, not me, but the city has a stable of consultants to give a quick eyeball of a trained LEP or licensed environmental professional, that's a geologist or a hydrogeologist, to determine if HRP, which is the company that the land trust hired, has done a proper job and whether or not there are alternatives that could be done. Number one, I just wanted to say that from my current small amount of, I was told by some members of the land trust who asked for my opinion, they've included very heavy concrete and pieces of metal that are not contaminated in the cost of removal of materials off the island. That doesn't make sense because it's heavy and you're paying by the ton. Secondly, I ask that this site, and I will say, since it was a known entity years ago, to avoid any material flowing or leaving the site into the sound, this site must be secured with plastic over it. So when it rains, no material will be let loose. Although I want to tell you that this cottage was upland, it wasn't right on, and I suggest that maybe some of you visit the site because it's a wonderful site, but the cottage was not right on the water. So I have, as a scientist, difficulty seeing how the PCBs, in the words of Ms. Holton, will flow into Long Island Sound in its current situation, only if there's sloppy removal, and I would not expect that to be the case. I have to look at the report, but I just, something's not adding up here as to the way this has been presented. As a former PCB regulator, yes, there are PCBs that have gotten into our waterways from leaks from electrical transformers. There's a long history of that, but on this site, it's very unusual for PCBs to move through the soil unless they are there is either solvent thrown on them, or there's a conduit of an old septic system pipe that goes directly into the harbor there at Village Creek. It's very unusual that they will move away from where they landed. And so, and asbestos is a mineral. I used to regulate it. Again, because there was a fire, much of the insulation may have absolutely just fallen to the ground. But there are alternative ways to do remediation, including biological control, and I don't know if that's been explored by this consulting firm, and I will ask the land trust in order to do that. But I think as conservation commissioners, you should ask similar questions. What alternatives were presented if and only if you decide to use public money for this? If you do not, then of course, it's great to have well wishes, and it would be great for the staff, including Alexis, to help them try to find fund, or for this commission to write a letter of advocacy that funds be given. But I do feel also that this is the management of this contamination issue has not been done very well by by some of my former colleagues, because it has been over 5 years since the initial discovery of the material. And it is very much a shame that a vandal burned down the cottage. But the discussion about what makes up open space and whether contaminated land is not open space, I just don't believe that is germane. I think it's kind of going around and around the block. So I just wanted to say thank you again. I hope I can gain access to some of these reports. I have some friends in the business. I'm going to recommend to this land trust that they go back to the drawing board, try to reduce the amount that's needed for the remediation, including asking HRP to use their errors and omissions insurance that all viable consulting firms have when they make mistakes like this. And if any of you would like to visit the site, I think you'll find it very good, because this cottage was upland. It was on a hill. The basement did not go down to groundwater, to my understanding. And I also feel that there are other funding mechanisms available. So I wish them luck. I thank you for your deliberations, and I thank you for tabling this to get more information. Lastly, I just wanted to say that the purpose of this fund, because it was started with Alex Knopp, was to make sure that we had monies available for the entire city. And currently, I am very aware there is an equity issue here that must be addressed. There is a need for open space, including Best Pocket Parks, in Norwalk Center and South Norwalk. Currently, we are searching to buy property to replace property that may open space parkland that may be taken for the Ely School if that goes forward. So I don't think using the money in this way for a private island in Rowayton is necessarily going to be the equitable way to spend all of the money. And I'm sorry to say that. Lastly, this commission needs to take a look at why the city of Norwalk is not utilizing the legislative enabled 0.25% of each of the, I think it's every $1,000 of property taxes to be put into the fund, so that we have a substantial fund that's in the millions instead of the small amount we've garnered over the last 5 years or so. Thank you for your time.
Alexis, has anybody else signed up? Alexis?
If any of the other attendees or attendee wishes to speak, just use the raise your hand feature to indicate you would like to speak. But if you're just listening, continue listening.
Let me know if you see any hands. I can't see anything from here.
Okay, nothing yet.
All right. Well, we can go on to comments of staff while we wait to see whether anybody raises their hand.
Oh, I have no comments. Just a busy spring is here, and you expect more corrective action applications coming down the pike. There are definitely some other applications that are not corrective action that are making their way towards you. Permits where they haven't started work, they're now starting work. So it's been busy. Hopefully I will be interviewing and hiring a part-time admin assistant who I've been without for a few weeks now. That'll be tomorrow. So that would be a lovely addition to my office.
Okay,
I try to screen so you don't see the worst of it.
thank you. Commissioners, anybody? Report of the commission chair, I haven't got a report. So now we're down to number 13.
Oh, wait a second. Actually, I do want to raise just a couple of real quick questions. Apologies. One is, the open space fund. I know, Alexis, earlier, somebody had asked you if you could give an explanation of sort of where that money how money from the open space fund has been spent in the past. And I'd also like to know how the money has come into the open space fund. When Diane Loricella was mentioned that, there's the state authorizes taking a portion of property taxes or something like that, 0.25% of something. But Norwalk does not avail itself of that enabling legislation. That's obviously would be something that the Common Council would decide. But I think it's something that, we as a commission, at some point when we do want to focus just on the open space fund and that resource, I think it's reasonable at some point for the commission to make a request to the Common Council to provide additional funding. I don't know what the funding's been in the past. I'm wondering how that $273,000 got there, but I think it's a great resource. I personally would love to spend all of that money for its intended purpose, which is to acquire open space and to preserving open space.
So yes, I have on my list the history of expenditures, the histories of revenue, and then the associated section of the 2019 POCD and the draft 2005 open space plan for your May 11th meeting. And then I have on my longer list of things to do is looking into the conveyance tax issue so that you have more information if you want to pursue that.
So, I would just propose to our chairman, perhaps at some point, we as a commission, when there's better attendance, might want to add to the agenda at some point when we're not discussing, violations or applications, discussing how we could hope to develop the open space fund as a useful resource for the purpose it was intended. That's one. The other one, real quick, is, and it's actually related. You gave the link for the open space fund documentation. It comes under Conservation Commission. The Conservation Commission is tasked with keeping an index of open areas. And I am wondering, do we actually have an index of open areas? And is that an index that is something that we can, is that reviewable? What do we have?
Yeah, I can send it to, it's not as easy as it sounds.
Of course not.
But yes, we have, I have a variety of lists. So I have a map, a geospatial data, but it is dated. It was probably last updated in 2009. And then I kind of have other lists that's not geospatial of changes that have happened since I had updated kind of the map. So I can send, yeah.
I mean, I think for a true and proper index of open spaces, and which of course isn't defined in the statute, but there probably should be a list of each of the individual properties owned by the city. All of the properties owned by the Norwalk Land Trust, all of the properties that owned by individual or nonprofit property owners that have either conservation easements or are undeveloped, that even just undeveloped land would probably be included in that index. Even if it's privately held, undeveloped land is open,
Yes.
yeah, is an open
Yeah, so I
area.
have a list of all vacant properties, a list of all city-owned properties, list of all properties owned by the land trust. So that's relatively easy.
Okay,
So it's the metrics of kind of quantifying and coming up with acreages for each of those. That's a much harder part to do. But a list of parcel ID or address, that's relatively easy.
If you want to volunteer, raise your hand.
Yeah, really.
Look,
The, when I looked at that list about 5 years ago, there were 92 properties that were listed as city-owned. They're not all vacant, they're not all empty, but it was at that time a comprehensive list. To come up with a list of all open space in the city, I'm not really sure how to approach that, but the city-owned properties are all pretty well recorded. There was, for example, there is one spot, and I once asked a guy who worked for the Recreation and Parks Department how they work on it, and he said, "I've worked here 17 years and I never heard of it." It's called Stonecrop Park, and it's between Lower Stonecrop Road and Upper Stonecrop Road. And the city thought the guy who owned the property where it was supposed to come together would sell it, and he didn't. And so now it's just open. It's beautiful. There's an old orchard there. Nobody knows it's there except teenagers who go there to drink beer. But it's one of the 92. It's on the list.
Yes.
As far as the uses of the open space fund are concerned, the only thing I was involved with was the last installment on the purchase of Farm Creek. And that was a fundraising effort of something like $4.5 million, and had got down to the point where there was $128 million left to satisfy it. And the open space fund, as it was described to me, was a last dollar project fund, that it was only used when it was going to be the last dollar needed to acquire the space. And that was the situation at Farm Creek, which was technically in private hands, but was in the process of being acquired by the land trust. So, anybody else?
Yeah. So one last thing, really quick. So the Norwalk Historical Society hosted a conservation panel at a Zoom meeting on April 15th. I don't know who was able to attend. I did. I was blown away. There were 5 panelists that had attended, one representing the Norwalk Land Trust, also the Norwalk Tree Alliance, the Norwalk River Watershed Association, the Norwalk River Valley Trail, and the Oak Hills Park. And it's really interesting to see the different citizen groups and entities that are involved in sort of conservation efforts that are, parallel but not necessarily exclusive to us. I mean, my thinking is, again, I'm not trying to make work for anybody. I hate work more than anyone, trust me. But it would be cool if the Conservation Commission, next time there's a panel, it would be great to have either Alexis or John or somebody talk about what the Conservation Commission of Norwalk does for conservation.
Soon as Alexis gets a stable that she can turn loose, that's a good idea. Okay, the door is still open if anyone else has a comment. If not, I for one move that we adjourn.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Have a nice spring, guys. We will see you on the 11th.
Good night.
Good night.
Night all.